So I caught myself thinking, and I was thinking about what does a championship mean for most players in the league, right? Like statistically, realistically, and in terms of legacy, what would one championship do for most of the big players in the league, right? And I just want to run down this list just so you know. See, because I was thinking about this year. And this year, obviously, it's either Nikola Jokic or Jimmy Butler or Jason Tatum who is going to win the championship. That right there tells you that one of three guys who are superstars in this league, who are top 10, 15 players in this league, and who are players who've carried their teams and actually been the driving force for the teams being successful, is going to have a championship this year. And as I caught myself thinking of that, I found it very interesting because those none of those guys have a championship. And it's the first time in a while that we've seen a finals of someone who doesn't have a ring, right? Like in ever since ever since I think I don't think we've seen that in the past like 20 years. I think I think the last time we saw that was 2006 when we saw for the first time we saw the Heat and Mavericks in the finals. Yeah, we saw the Heat and the Mavericks in the finals. It was young Dwayne Wade versus young Dirk. They were facing off, right? And that basically meant that whoever won that ring would win their first ring of all time, like the superstar on that team. After that, you had many seasons, but most of them, I think all of them, had to do with, at least one team or player who had a ring being on that. In 2007 it was the Spurs, 8 it was the Lakers, or at least Kobe. 9 was the Lakers, 10 was the Lakers, right? Then in 11 it was, and then in 2011 too. In 2011 too, LeBron, but D Wade still had one though. So it's been 2006 and 2011 where we've seen a finals where both of the teams don't have a championship with that core, and the best player on both teams don't have a championship. I find that very interesting to say that apart from those 2 years and maybe 2000, in the past 23 years, we've only seen that 3 times, and we're going to see it again this year, so that makes it 4 times. I believe that we are seeing one of the most historic seasons we will see in a while, because whoever wins this championship cements themselves in history. Let me run through players and what a championship would do for them. I'm doing all the players in the league. I am not holding back, but I am going to start with the ones who have a chance of winning it right now, for respect to the fact that they got to this point, right? First, obviously, we have Nikola Jokic, since he's on the finals. And a championship for Nikola Jokic would cement him as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Of course, he wouldn't make him a top 10 player, not even close to that, but it would make him like a top 30 player, right? Easily. Because the only thing he would need are longevity awards. It would put him right close to Giannis and what Giannis did, but not as defined as Giannis, and it would make him instantly jump from maybe the 60th best, 50th best player of all time to like top 30 easily, immediately, right? Because we're assuming that they win the finals MVP, by the way. For Jimmy Butler, it would put him as one of the greatest players of all time. Jimmy Butler's a Hall of Famer, just due to his career, him being in the finals, such a playoff threat, always being back and always making stuff happen for his team. he's always been a game changer, and he's always been one of these guys who's been extremely consistent, extremely good, and in the playoffs becomes a monster. So I think a championship for Jimmy Butler would mean a ascend into one of the greats stardom. I don't think it would obviously make him like a top 30 player because he's missing that hardware of MVPs, Defensive Player of the Years, but he has enough longevity awards to the point where he could sit comfortably with a guy like Dr. J, right? Like a guy who, even though he did most of his damage in the ABA, that's why we underrate him. Dr. J sits comfortably with one championship and he cruises. Everyone regards him as an all time great. No one disrespects him. But it's not like we're up here talking about Dr. J as if he was this mystical beast and like he's a top 10 player. Then for Jason Tatum, I think it would set a stepping stone. And I know that for a lot of people, I'm talking about it defining their legacies like Jokic and Jimmy Butler, but Jason Tatum, it would be one stepping stone because he is so young. You see, Jokic is in the prime of his career, and he's already done enough to be able to retire and be considered a top 75 player of all time. 2 MVPs does that for you, and that's just a fact. But for Jason Tatum, it would basically mean that it would give him the stepping stone to become one of the greatest players of all time through more championships, more playoffs appearance, maybe an MVP, yada yada. For a guy like, now I'm going to start running through the players who, even though they've lost or didn't even make the playoffs, could use it. First, I'm going to start with Luka Doncic. For him, it would be a stepping stone. Luka has had way better seasons than Jason Tatum and has had way better runs, but a championship for Luka Doncic would make him instantly just one of the best players that we've seen. Like, I think he would get put in that category probably of Dirk, of Kevin Garnett, of it's like guys who were incredible but only ever won one championship. For a guy like Steph Curry and LeBron, it would just basically define and help build onto their legacy. For Steph, it would probably make him have an argument for the greatest point guard ever. For LeBron, it would make him have an argument as the GOAT, right? And I know that a lot of people say, oh, he's already the GOAT. Yeah, but it would like solidify it, make it even more intense, especially since his core right now in the Lakers is not as good as a lot of the teams he's been on. So for a guy like KD and Chris Paul, it would help propel them to a level that they've never been before. With KD, it would, people consider KD, oh yeah, he's a top 50, top 12 player. He's awesome. He's the second or third best small forward. I think a championship would propel him to be an immediate top 10 player, especially if he wins it with Phoenix, or at least one of those players who now he's going to be in conversations that he was never in before, right? Like now the conversations are going to be, is he better than Larry Bird? Or is he better than certain guys who he's never been compared to due to his statistical and accolades that he has throughout his career? Chris Paul, it would put him in the top 5 point guards conversation. Let's face it, that's just facts, right? Like a lot right now, people either have him very high or very low, but it would put him as a top 3 point guard ever, and that's just a fact because Chris Paul has done absolutely everything but win a championship. So yeah. And then finally, just to name a few guys, with Giannis, it would put him as a top 15 player ever. I feel fully confident in saying that. There's no doubt in my mind Giannis has done everything, and he's been extremely consistent, and he's going to keep being consistent since he's pretty young. With a guy like Joel Embiid, it would put him in the pedigree, but I believe that he wouldn't have the esteem that Jokic has because he only has one MVP and he's lost in the second round all these years. But winning a championship would probably put him up there with, as a definitely top 30 player of all time, top 35, right? And finally, for some guys like Trae Young or, you know, Kawhi Leonard, it would just help them round their legacies and start something new. With Kawhi, a lot of people don't respect him due to his longevity, so it would help him round out his legacy and actually prove to everybody that yes, I've won 3 championships in 3 different teams. I'm one of the best players of all time. With Trae Young, it would be like, yes, I'm a great player, right? Y'all don't have to worry about my defense because I'm that good offensively. And yes, there are many more players, but in my opinion, those were probably some that have the most impact in the league. Oh, and obviously for Damian Lillard, it would put him up there. It would put him up there as one of the greatest players ever, right? Not top 10, not top 20, obviously, but it would definitely boost his stock immensely just to have that ring.